Welcome the anointed ones. God will let them mislabel you, just to humble them when the truth breaks loose. Pause. Let that sit in your spirit for a moment, because what if I told you, you didn't just walk through hell for no reason? You were the quiet storm they couldn't forecast. Here's a fact that'll twist your spine. Studies show that the human brain takes 13 milliseconds to recognize a face, but it can take years for people to recognize your worth. And by then, oh, it's too late. They already laughed, they already lied, they already low-key celebrated your downfall with party hats and plastic champagne, but now it's hitting them like bricks, not pebbles, not gentle realizations, bricks. Because the truth don't whisper when it shows up. It knocks the wind out of folks. And baby, you were the revelation wrapped in skin. You were the blessing they rejected like junk mail, only to realize later you were the certified letter from heaven marked urgent. And the kicker? You didn't even gloat. You just kept rising. So buckle up, because in this video, we're exposing every moment they overlooked, misjudged, and tried to bury the very person that was carrying the light the whole time. You ready? Because this ain't just a message, this is spiritual restitution. Number 1, they mistook your humility for invisibility, but now they realize your silence wasn't weakness, it was divine surveillance. They thought you were quiet because you were weak. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to offer, no fire, no substance. But what they didn't realize is you were never silent. You were listening, watching, studying. You were giving people enough space to reveal who they really were without you having to say a word. While they were running their mouths, performing for approval, trying to one-up you or low-key mock you, you were collecting data. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was divine surveillance. You were never trying to compete because your lane was spiritual. You didn't move like them because your assignment wasn't like theirs. While they were trying to climb ladders built by man, you were being elevated by forces they couldn't see. But since your blessings didn't come wrapped in a spotlight, they counted you out. You weren't flashy, you weren't begging for validation, you didn't need to be center stage. And to people addicted to attention, that looked like you were losing. But you weren't losing, you were loading. Now the truth is hitting them hard, because everything they thought you lacked, you had in abundance. You had discernment, you had divine backing, you had character they couldn't fake, and strength they couldn't copy. And now that the light is shining on you, they're realizing you weren't behind. You were hidden by God, protected by the very silence they mocked. And here's what's really burning them. You never needed to prove a thing. You never had to explain, argue, or retaliate. You just kept showing up, kept growing, kept evolving. And now, they're choking on the very narratives they built about you. Every lie they told, every moment they downplayed you, every joke at your expense, it's collapsing under the weight of truth. Turns out you were never invisible. You were being preserved. And now that it's your season, it's too late to unsee the truth. You were the one, the whole damn time. Number 2, you didn't change. They woke up from the lie they built around you. You didn't suddenly become important. You didn't level up overnight. What actually happened is they finally sobered up from the lies they built around you. They created a version of you in their head that was easy to dismiss, easy to mock, easy to overlook. It wasn't even about you. It was about their ego needing to feel bigger. So they told themselves you were nothing special, doing too much, or not on their level. And they repeated it so often they believed it. But now reality's breaking through, and it's brutal. You didn't change. The truth just became too loud to ignore. The same energy, wisdom, and light you always had is finally being seen without the fog of their projections. And it's shaking them, because now they realize they didn't see you. They saw their insecurities. They didn't hear you. They heard their fear of being outgrown. They didn't reject you because you weren't worthy. They rejected you because your presence made them uncomfortable with who they weren't. Now the script is flipped. The same person they downplayed has become the one everyone's drawn to. The energy you naturally carry, the insight you speak with, the peace that follows you, it's undeniable, and they can't figure out how they missed it. But deep down, they know. It wasn't that you were hiding. It's that they were too arrogant to look beyond the image they created. It hurts them because they realize they weren't around for the real you. They were in the room with greatness and treated it like background noise. And now that everyone's watching, they want a second chance to see you, to claim they always knew. But it's too late, because what they're seeing now isn't a new version of you. It's the same you that's always been there. The difference is, this time, God didn't let them look away. Number 3, your rejection was their spiritual test, and they failed. They didn't just reject you, they failed a divine test. You were sent into their life as a blessing, as a turning point, as a way out of spiritual stagnation. But they were too blinded by pride, too busy measuring status, too caught up in appearances to recognize what was right in front of them. Your presence wasn't random. It was on purpose. You were there to challenge their comfort, to pull them out of small thinking, to bring clarity into chaos. And instead of embracing that, they mocked it, they pushed it away. They tried to minimize you to feel safe in their illusions. The rejection they threw at you wasn't personal. It was spiritual blindness. They couldn't handle the purity of your energy, the depth of your insight, the power behind your stillness. You didn't come into their life to worship them or compete with them. You came carrying light. You came carrying elevation. You came carrying a mirror. And that mirror made them uncomfortable because it reflected everything they refused to heal, so they ran. Or they mistreated you. Or they tried to flip the script and make you feel small, as if that would erase what you were sent to do. But deep down they knew, they felt it. There was something different about you, something sacred, something divine, and they played with it like it was disposable. Now the fallout has started. The shift is obvious. Your life is ascending, your energy is untouchable, and they're stuck replaying the moment they walked away from a divine assignment. Not because you begged for their validation, but because now they're left with the ache of spiritual failure. The ache of knowing they were tested and failed. The truth is, people rarely recognize holy ground while they're standing on it. They only realize what it was after they've been removed. You were their lifeline. You were the divine interruption in their cycle, and they treated you like a detour. Now, that mistake haunts them, because the door you were holding open is sealed shut. Number 4, you were the vault they tried to rob, not knowing it was protected by God Himself. They thought they could access you without respecting you. They thought they could take from you without ever pouring into you. You were the vault, full of wisdom, healing, creativity, insight, and divine power. But instead of honoring that, they tried to manipulate it. They thought they could copy your essence, drain your spirit, and still leave you empty and unnoticed. They came with greedy hands and selfish intentions, thinking you wouldn't notice. But they forgot one thing. You weren't unguarded. You were protected the entire time, not by people, not by titles, not by status, but by God. Every attempt to use you, steal from you, or benefit off your anointing without doing the work, blocked. What looked like betrayal was actually divine exposure. Every person who mishandled you ended up revealing who they really were, because they weren't just trying to get close, they were trying to extract. Like spiritual thieves breaking into a sacred space they never earned the right to enter. But now the vault is closed. You're no longer accessible to those who showed their true motives. You no longer explain, overextend, or make room for people who only wanted what you could do, not who you are. They're stuck on the outside, confused, powerless, and exposed, trying to figure out why their old tricks don't work anymore, trying to mimic your glow, your wisdom, your strength, without realizing your source was never external. It wasn't your talent, your looks, your charm, or even your kindness that made you powerful. It was your divine connection. And that can't be stolen, faked, or reproduced. Now they're watching from a distance as you thrive, elevate, and walk in your purpose without them. And the pain isn't just that they lost access, it's that they finally realized they never had permission to begin with. They tried to rob the vault, not knowing heaven held the keys. Number 5. The mask they wore to belittle you has melted under the heat of truth. They spent so much time pretending to be above you, smarter than you, more together than you. They built entire identities around the idea that you were less. Every room you walked into, they tried to shrink you with backhanded compliments, subtle jabs, fake smiles. Not because you were lacking, but because your presence threatened their performance. They wore masks of confidence, control, wisdom, but it was all smoke. Behind the scenes, they were watching you closely, studying you, mimicking you, competing with you in secret while pretending you were beneath them in public. They needed the illusion that you were nothing special to feel good about themselves. They invested in that story, fed it, built friendships and conversations around it. And now the truth has come roaring in like fire. And that mask they wore, it's melting, fast. Their persona can't stand the weight of your revealed power. They can't hide behind fake superiority anymore because people see you now. They see the depth you always had, the light, the strength, the way you carry truth without forcing it. And here's what stings the most. The people they once convinced to look down on you are now looking up to you. The story has flipped. The same ones who laughed are asking questions. The same ones who whispered doubt are now loud with praise. And those masks, the ego-driven performances, the fake confidence, the loud opinions, they're all collapsing like cheap props under a spotlight. You never had to prove anything. They built false identities trying to outrun your authenticity. And now that your light is undeniable, those identities are crumbling. Not because you exposed them, but because the truth did. Their need to feel superior was never about you. It was about their fear of being seen for who they really are. And now, stripped of the mask, they're left with the one thing they feared the most, being compared to the real thing. You. Number 6. You didn't lose them. They lost access to a prophetic frequency. They thought walking away from you or mistreating you was just about losing a person. But you were never just a friend, sibling, partner, or co-worker. You were a spiritual portal, a carrier of frequency, a living signal from God that offered clarity, peace, healing, and direction. You didn't speak just to be heard. You spoke with insight that cut through confusion. You didn't just listen, you discerned. You didn't just love. You poured a divine kind of love that helped people heal parts of themselves they didn't even know were broken, but they didn't recognize the weight of your presence until it was gone. They thought they were doing you a favor by being in your life. They thought your wisdom was common, your peace was luck, and your patience was weakness. Now that you're no longer in their space, it's loud, static, emotionally cluttered. Nothing hits the same. No connection flows right. Conversations feel shallow. The advice they get now feels like noise. They thought they were the power in the room, but it was you all along. You were the reason things felt aligned. You were the reason peace lingered even when chaos tried to creep in. And here's the deeper truth. They didn't just lose a relationship. They lost divine access. You were a channel, a bridge, an answered prayer they mishandled. And now that you've pulled your energy back, their world is spinning, and they can't figure out why. The same people who rolled their eyes at your intuition are now lost without your direction. The same ones who ignored your discernment are now stumbling into problems you used to shield them from without them even knowing. They didn't just lose you, they lost alignment. They lost the prophetic frequency that came with you. And that kind of access isn't something you just replace. It was a once-in-a-lifetime connection disguised in everyday clothes. And now that you're gone, they're just beginning to realize you weren't in the room, you were the room. Number 7. They spent years mocking what they didn't understand, and now they're obsessed with what they can't access. They used to laugh at the way you thought, the way you spoke, the way you moved. You didn't fit their mold, and that made them uncomfortable. So they turned their confusion into mockery. They joked about your spiritual depth, rolled their eyes at your convictions, downplayed your gifts, and treated your uniqueness like a flaw. But what they didn't realize was, what they were mocking wasn't weird. It was divine. You were tapped into something they couldn't define, so they tried to diminish it. For years, they treated your insight like nonsense, your sensitivity like weakness, your silence like confusion. They called you too deep, too much, or not enough. But now the very things they once dismissed are the things people are now running toward. The same energy they mocked has become the energy the world is craving. Your words are now reposted. Your energy is requested. Your presence is in demand. And the people who thought they knew you are sitting in the background, watching the world finally give you the respect they never had the vision to give. Now they're obsessed. But it's too late. You've outgrown the circle they tried to keep you trapped in. You're no longer accessible to the people who treated your purpose like a punchline. And what's haunting them now is the fact that they had front-row seats to greatness and wasted it trying to tear it down. They were in the presence of a rare soul and thought they were the ones doing you a favor. They missed the memo. Your uniqueness was never meant for everyone. You weren't born for mass consumption. You were a sacred experience, not a spectacle. And now that you've been revealed to the world, they're realizing the hardest truth of all. They had access before the spotlight, and they lost it while trying to dim it. Now they watch from afar, tormented by the echo of everything they never understood. Number 8. You carried ancient codes in your spirit. While they played small, you embodied galaxies. You were never thinking like them. While they were chasing clout, you were carrying ancient codes. Divine blueprints wired into your spirit that couldn't be explained, only activated. You weren't driven by trends or validation. You were tuned into something timeless. While they lived for the next moment of attention, you were preparing for lifetimes of purpose. Your thoughts stretched across generations. Your intuition whispered secrets that hadn't even reached their awareness. They mistook your calm for confusion, your focus for detachment, and your depth for delusion. But you weren't disconnected. You were way ahead. You didn't just walk into rooms. You carried realms with you. Galaxies of insight, dimensions of clarity, frequencies of healing. You didn't just speak. You transmitted. You didn't just move. You aligned timelines. But they couldn't see it. Not because you weren't radiant, but because their vision was shallow. They were measuring success with metrics designed for followers, not leaders. So they laughed. They gossiped. They labeled you too intense, too different, too spiritual. But the truth is, you were simply too vast for their small lens. Now destiny has caught up with time, and suddenly, everything's flipped. The spotlight has found you, not because you chased it, but because your frequency demanded it. Now they're watching you rise, not just with attention, but with alignment. And it's hitting them. They spent all that time performing, while you were becoming. They were building images, while you were downloading divine instructions. The gap is undeniable now, not in popularity, but in power. You're walking in doors they can't even locate. You're speaking in rooms they can't enter, not because you're better, but because you were always different. While they were busy being seen, you were being sent. And now that your calling is undeniable, they're just now realizing they weren't ahead. They were looping in circles. While you were already galaxies ahead, orbiting in purpose. Number 9. They thought you were in survival mode, but you were in sacred preparation. They saw your quiet moments, your periods of solitude, and assumed you were just trying to survive. They thought your isolation was weakness, that you were out of the game, that you were falling behind. They couldn't comprehend why you weren't always out seeking attention, why you weren't chasing after validation, why you were okay with being alone. They assumed you were just stuck in a rut, when in reality you were in sacred preparation. They had no idea that while they were busy running after distractions, you were being intentionally hidden away, being molded by forces they couldn't understand. You weren't wasting time. You weren't just biding your days. Every moment of solitude was a lesson. Every season of silence was an anointing. The divine was working behind the scenes, whispering strategies, strengthening your soul, sharpening your spirit. Every test, every trial, every quiet night spent reflecting was a weapon being forged in the fires of spiritual preparation. While they laughed at what seemed like your downtime, the truth is, you were in the gym of the universe, training for battles they couldn't even see coming. Now the storm is here. Your purpose has manifested, and everything you once kept to yourself is now being unleashed. The very strength, wisdom, and clarity you gained in your quiet seasons are now the tools you're using to dominate. They can't ignore it. They can't deny it. You weren't struggling. You were being prepared for something they never thought you'd have to face. And now, you're walking in the power of every moment they underestimated. What they thought was weakness is now the source of your victory. What they thought was a low point was actually the divine working behind the scenes, equipping you with weapons of resilience, wisdom, and purpose. You weren't just surviving. You were being trained for war. And now, the battle is yours to win. Number 10. They didn't betray a person, they rejected an assignment from the Most High. They thought they were rejecting you, but what they didn't realize was that they were rejecting something far greater than just a person. They were turning their back on an assignment from the Most High. You weren't just a passing encounter, a simple relationship, or another person to fill a space in their life. You were a divine interruption. A spiritual assignment sent to pull them out of their comfort zone, to challenge their limited thinking, to guide them through personal growth they hadn't yet achieved. When they hurt you, when they betrayed you, it wasn't just a petty act of malice. It was cosmic rebellion. It was them choosing their pride, their comfort, their limited understanding over the expansion you were sent to offer. You were sent to elevate them, to guide them, to help them see things they couldn't yet see. You carried wisdom, insight, and healing, and you brought all of it to their doorstep. But instead of receiving it, they dismissed it. Instead of growing with it, they rejected it. And in doing so, they rejected the very divine purpose behind it. Now, the consequences are unfolding. Their stagnation is not your fault. It's the result of their spiritual arrogance. The same arrogance that made them believe they could choose which divine assignments they accepted and which they could ignore. They thought they could shut you out, block your influence, and continue on their way as if nothing would change. But it's clear now, their soul is stuck. Their growth is delayed. They are left in a loop of the same mistakes, the same struggles, the same patterns. They thought they could discard the gift you brought and still find fulfillment, but all they've found is emptiness. You were sent to shift them, but their rejection of you, of the assignment, is keeping them bound. Now they're standing in the mess of their own choices, realizing too late that the key to their evolution was the very person they decided to hurt. Number 11. You were their exit from generational curses, and they spit in the face of their own freedom. You were more than just a blessing in their life. You were the key to breaking the chains of their ancestors. You weren't just a person. You were a divine intervention sent to disrupt the patterns of pain, struggle, and limitation that had plagued their family for generations. Your presence alone had the power to shift entire bloodlines, to cut through curses that had been passed down like an inherited inheritance of trauma and hardship. You brought the opportunity for healing, elevation, and freedom, but they couldn't see it. Instead of embracing the gift of transformation you offered, they chose ego. They chose comfort. They chose the familiar over the unknown, the easy over the evolution. They resisted the very change you represented, thinking they could hold on to their pride and their old ways without any consequence. What they didn't realize was that their rejection of you wasn't just a personal slight, it was a rejection of freedom. They spit in the face of their own escape, unwilling to face the discomfort that comes with breaking out of old patterns, and in doing so, they sealed their fate to stay stuck. You were the door to their liberation, and they slammed it shut with their arrogance and pride. Now the curses that once had the potential to be broken remain. The same cycles continue, the same struggles reappear, the same fears and failures repeat themselves, because they couldn't rise to meet the challenge you offered. They couldn't accept the shift you embodied. But while they remain bound, you rise. You rise above what they never dared face. You move forward into the freedom and elevation they could have had if they had simply let go of their need for control and their fear of change. Your journey continues, untouched by the curses they still cling to. You are the proof that evolution comes with courage, that breaking free requires letting go of what holds you down. And as they stay trapped in the chains they refuse to break, you soar into the future they will never know. Number 12. They needed you broken to feel relevant, but now your healing has made them obsolete. They spent so much time trying to break you, trying to see you fall, thinking that if they could keep you down, they'd feel powerful, relevant, superior. Your struggle, your pain, your moments of vulnerability were their fuel. They thrived on the idea that your wounds made them feel bigger, that your suffering somehow made them feel more important. They needed you to stay in a state of brokenness so they could maintain their own sense of significance. They could point at your flaws, highlight your scars, and in doing so, reassure themselves that they weren't as lost or as flawed as you. But now something they never expected has happened. You've healed, you've grown, you've risen out of the darkness they tried to keep you in, and in doing so, you've rendered their whole game irrelevant. They don't know how to relate to you anymore because you're no longer the same person they could manipulate, belittle, or project their insecurities onto. The person they once had control over, the person they could look down on, has become someone they can't recognize. You don't need them to validate your worth anymore. You don't need them to define your strength. And that truth eats at their ego every single day. They don't know how to position themselves next to you now. You've outgrown their narrative. You've healed beyond the point of needing anyone to hold you in your pain. And without that attachment to your trauma, they find themselves powerless. You've moved beyond the drama, beyond the dysfunction, beyond the need for them to be a part of your life in that way. Your healing has exposed their own insecurities. Your growth has shown them just how small their world was when they were holding you down. They thought they needed to keep you broken to feel relevant, but now it's your strength that makes them obsolete. Now they're left with the uncomfortable truth. You no longer need them, and that reality strips them of the power they once thought they held over you. And that truth, it devours their ego piece by piece until they're left with nothing but the reflection of their own pettiness. Number 13. You weren't looking for validation. You were waiting for divine alignment. You were never in the game for applause, for likes, or for any kind of superficial validation. While they were busy chasing approval from the crowd, you were waiting for something far more powerful: divine alignment. You weren't looking for people to tell you that you were on the right path, or for others to praise your steps. You knew that true fulfillment doesn't come from the fleeting excitement of external recognition. What mattered to you was timing, the right moment when everything would fall into place because it was meant to. So while they chased clout, while they tried to get the crowd's attention, you were grounded in a quiet knowing. You understood that greatness doesn't need to announce itself. The universe doesn't need applause to operate in your favor. You were waiting for the timing of the divine, knowing that true alignment would come when the pieces of your life finally locked into their correct places. And now that it has happened, you see the world around you differently. Their absence, it doesn't hurt. It confirms your elevation. It's no longer a blow to your spirit, a painful loss to your heart. It's evidence that you've grown beyond what they could ever offer you. Their lack of presence is not a reflection of your failure, but a clear sign that you're moving at a frequency they can't even access anymore. It's a confirmation that you've moved on to the next level, that the people who couldn't align with your purpose were never meant to go where you're going. Their absence doesn't make you feel small or incomplete. It frees you to step fully into the destiny that was always waiting for you. You weren't waiting for their validation. You were waiting for alignment. And now that you're in perfect harmony with your divine purpose, the absence of those who didn't understand you only strengthens the truth that you've made it to the place you were always destined to be. The universe has confirmed your path, and that in itself is the most profound kind of validation. Number 14. God hid you in plain sight so no one could claim they made you. God placed you right in front of their eyes, but they couldn't see you for who you truly were. You were hidden in plain sight, not because you were unworthy, but because heaven wanted to make sure no one could claim credit for your greatness. People looked past you, underestimated you, and dismissed you because they couldn't fathom the depth of your potential. They couldn't understand that you were never just meant to blend in with the crowd. You were a masterpiece, divinely crafted and meticulously placed in their midst, so that when the time came, the world would realize that no one had the power to make you. The reason they overlooked you wasn't because you were lacking. It was because heaven was protecting you. It was a strategic concealment. No one was allowed to steal your glory. No one was allowed to take credit for the unique greatness that was being cultivated in the background. The ones who claimed to help you, the ones who tried to ride your coattails, They were kept in the dark. They didn't see what was inside you because your brilliance wasn't meant to be exploited by the shallow hands of those who didn't truly understand it. But now, the veil is lifting. Now that the unveiling is happening, everything is falling into place. And as the world wakes up to your brilliance, they are realizing something powerful. They were looking at an imitation all along, but you were the original blueprint. They tried to copy what they couldn't comprehend, trying to replicate your essence without understanding the source. And now the world is seeing the truth. You were never the second option, never the afterthought, never the imitation. You were the template all along, the one that was always meant to shine. As the layers peel away, everyone will finally understand what was hidden in plain sight all this time. Your uniqueness, your purpose, your light. These were never meant to be shared or borrowed. They were always yours. And now that you're standing in your full glory, no one can deny it. In the end, everything you've endured, every setback, every moment of isolation was part of a divine plan far beyond their comprehension. They didn't know what they were dealing with when they tried to break you, when they tried to dim your light, when they thought you were just a momentary blip in their story. The truth is, you were the catalyst for their change, the divine blueprint, the living proof that greatness doesn't need recognition. It just needs time to align. They needed you in ways they couldn't understand, and by rejecting you, they sealed their own stagnation. You were the lesson they couldn't learn, the escape they couldn't accept, and now, as you rise, they're left behind, tangled in their own limited view of the world. You didn't need their validation. You just needed the right timing. And now that it's here, the world can see who you were meant to be all along. The unveiling is happening. The masks are coming off. The lies are being exposed. And the truth of your journey is shining through in ways that can't be ignored. Your absence in their lives isn't a loss. It's the confirmation of your elevation. You were always meant for something higher, something greater. And now, as you walk fully into your purpose, the world is waking up to the fact that you were the one all along. They didn't break you. They didn't steal your light. They simply gave you the space to grow, to heal, and to rise above the chaos they tried to create. And in the end, the victory is yours, not because you fought, but because you stood firm in your truth and allowed the divine timing to reveal the masterpiece that you are. The truth is undeniable. You were the one, the entire time. And now, everyone else can see it too. If this message resonated with you, and you feel like it's time to step fully into the power that's been waiting for you, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on the content that's going to keep pushing you to elevate beyond the limits others tried to place on you. Like this video if you're ready to claim your power, and drop a comment below. Let's talk about how you've risen above and what's next in your journey. Your story matters, and it's time for the world to see you shine. Let's keep this conversation going, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Because when the chosen ones rise, they rise together. Stay tuned, stay powerful, and as always, keep shining. You've got this.